to welcome everyone to the Carquinez Village Speaker Series. For those of you who don't know the Carquinez Village, we are a nonprofit membership organization founded by older adults for older adults to connect, support, and inspire one another as we age. The presentation today is fire prevention and safety around the house. And our featured speaker is Inspector Robert Lewis, a fire prevention inspector with the Benicia Fire Department. Inspector Lewis has been with the Benicia Fire Department for over 3 years and specializes in fire prevention and fire code compliance. Robert's primary duties are fire life safety inspections, construction inspections, public education, and fire plan review. Robert is committed to community outreach by providing fire extinguisher training, evacuation drills, and promoting fire preparedness. Without further delay, Robert Lewis.
Thank you very much, Cynthia, for the introduction. That saved me a little bit of time, so I appreciate it. And also want to thank you and Diane to allow the Benicia Fire Department, me specifically, to come on and help and guide and assist in home fire prevention and natural disaster preparedness. I anticipated a larger turnout for the audience, so I kind of want to change my approach a little bit and want to allow any of the viewers or audience to engage in discussion, engage in questions. And initially my anticipation was to do about 40 minutes of lecture and about 20 minutes of questions and answers. From these trainings, I've learned that everyone takes more information away of engaging in discussion. So I highly encourage it, and don't feel bad for interrupting or wanting a question to get answered. So feel free to speak out loud. I'm here for you guys, and want to address all your questions and concerns that you have. So just to dive into today's training and lecture, I wanted to give you guys some stats of where currently older adults and senior citizens are at with fires and fatalities in the home. And this is a good time to get a little bit different perspective of the fire service and really what we're faced against, and how we can all contribute to lowering those facts and statistics, and sharing this along with others. So one thing that I hope to take away is that everyone learns something and then shares that with their family and loved ones, and hopes that we can all contribute to the end goal of fire safety. So to start with the statistics, and these are stats from FEMA and the U.S. Fire Administration, is that for older adults 65 and over, smoking is the leading cause of home fire deaths. And this is good to, put into consideration if you are a smoker, is how to reduce that and how to prevent accidental fires. The second stat I would like to share is the number one cause of house fires. And this is pretty standard across all age ranges, and that the leading cause is kitchen fires and cooking fires specifically. So to consider that, I've based most of this lecture around preventing home fires, how to prepare your home, and how to prepare yourself for the unexpected. So in 2018, in the United States, older adults had a 2.6 times greater risk of dying in a fire than the total population combined. And for ages 85 and over, it was 3.8 times more likely for a person to die in a fire than the overall combined population. So taking that into consideration, it's, how do we reduce those numbers? And the way that I've the way that I've created the agenda is to kind of talk on the important facts that I feel that are most essential to consider. A lot of what I'll be discussing today, I can go in detail in an 8 hour long training. So I'm going to narrow it down, simplify it, focus on the key points, and provide recommendations and tips of how we can all work together and try to prevent this from happening to us or our family members. So to start, I wanted to kind of dive right into emergency preparedness and natural disaster awareness. And here in Benicia, Vallejo, and Solano County as a whole, it's important to start with considering really what our risks here are within the community. And those three things are, and this may be a reminder to others, or a new learning fact for others, but it's fire, flood, and earthquake. And during this presentation, I'll go through each type of hazard and give you my best professional opinion on how to prevent, how to be aware, and how to prepare for these types of emergencies. And wanted to, firsthand kind of address the misconception or the comparison from Benicia, Vallejo, the Carquinez area in comparison to, Northern California areas where those areas have suffered from catastrophic wildfires. And I occasionally get it, all the time from Benicia residents that we are, similar to those communities that have had fires and significant loss of life. And to put that into perspective, here in Solano, here in Benicia, there are no areas within our city limits that are a part of a wildland urban interface area or a high or very high severe fire hazard severity zone. So when you want to compare, our grasslands to, dense forests with significant field, there's a big difference. Not saying that we're out of the clear and our risk is low, but I'm saying it's not a good comparison. And I occasionally get that where people want to compare us to these areas. And I want to let you all know that currently, Benicia is in a light and moderate fire risk area. I know that we've all seen fires on the news, and we've also seen, a long history of fires here in California. And the reality of it is that it's not going away anytime soon. Due to topography, due to climatic conditions, due to tree diseases and forest management. These are all things that are not really out of our control, but they do play a lot of role into the severity of fires and how fire spread travels throughout forests. And here for us, luckily, we're really prone to grassland fires. And I do want to not steer you guys away from the facts of where we currently at, but to also bring awareness that areas in Northern California have a lot more significant danger than we do. When it comes to open space, such as east of Lake Herman, or houses abutting open space here in Benicia, the threat is definitely there. And I do want to, express concern and, demonstrate that the city is doing what they need to do to prevent these fires from grassland areas to coming on to residential housing developments and whatnot. So currently we do manage these open what do you call it? I'm sorry, lost my thought there. Open space areas here in town. We do manage these areas with goats and also by disking. And that's how we've mitigated the hazard of fires, spreading into urban areas. So the threat is definitely there. It is a lot milder than other areas that we see on the news with fires. But I wanted to kind of address that first. And the direction of where this is going is it's not going away anytime soon. And now, before an emergency or fire emergency occurs, is to put everything into perspective, make a plan, and to be reactive so that our property or persons are not affected by these fires. So to kind of jump into fire prevention itself within the home, I'll start on the outside of the house and kind of work your way into the house on how to mitigate and to enhance these life safety features and preparedness for fires. So for your backyards, what we teach to others, which is stemmed from the California Fire Code, is defensible space. I know this has been big the last I would say the last 5 years on clearing weeds around your house, getting rid of any solid fuels that can burn, like fallen tree limbs, wood, anything that doesn't need to be there that can burn probably should go. So really the expectation for us, and what I encourage for everyone to do, depending on their mobility and ability to do so, is to focus on 30 feet around your house on all sides or to the property line, whichever is closer. The 30 feet does play a significant role for property protection if a fire were to encroach upon your property. And the 30 feet, I'm not sure if anyone has big backyards or small backyards, but as long as you maintain your property, your area will be significantly lower than areas that are unmaintained. Some things that I get asked a lot is, well, how high should our grass be? And my answer to that is, if the grass is green and it's maintained, there's no threat there. If you have native vegetation and grasses that turn dry and become, easily flammable or ignitable, usually in the early summer months, is that the grasses should be no higher than 4 inches in height. If they are above 4 inches, that's going to be your cue to get them knocked down. And I know most backyards don't have native vegetation, but the vegetation that we're really prone to here in Benicia is kind of, it's determinate upon moisture levels and, watering those grasses. So once they're knocked down, they're usually not growing back up until the following winter and spring, where we get our rains. So if your grasses are dry and they're over 4 inches, you're going to want to get them cut down. That's going to play a significant role in flame spread and a fire coming up to your property. The other question that is normal to get asked is, what about our trees and our bushes and our ornamental shrubbery and, certain plants of that like. And my direction is, for healthy plants, ornamental shrubbery, bushes that are constantly, being watered and are not dry, there's no threat there. I don't expect anyone to, be removing this stuff with the concern that it's going to contribute to fire spread and a fire hazard itself. The vertical clearance that I always recommend to people is for tree limbs and whatnot, is to have at least 7 feet of vertical clearance. And this will help with fires spreading from, grasses to backyard wooden fences and then to trees. So with the 7-foot clearance, it helps out significantly, and it reduces that that ladder feels effect. That's what we know it as in wildland firefighting. The good thing for us here in Benicia is that we do have a pretty quick response time to fires, and in my 4 years, I've seen very minor property loss due to wildland grass fires. So want to kind of share that with you on the outside of your house is that, with the proper maintenance, the risk goes down. And, it's a good time now, if you don't do it already, is to go out and evaluate what the surroundings of your house look like.
Excuse me, Robert.
Yes.
I think Rose, did you have a question?
I'm trying to do the chat. What does vertical clearance mean? The tree goes straight up. What do you mean?
Yeah, what I mean by that is tree limbs being within 8 feet of the ground level. So what I'm trying to get at is, if you have a fire on your property, it started in the grass, it can extend to a backyard wooden fence and then to a tree. Or if you have very tall grasses, your grasses then can extend to a tree, which encroach upon the house itself. So what I mean vertical clearance is to really if you have tree branches hanging down to the ground, you might just want to get it cut. So if there is a fire, that it stays contained and it's not spreading vertically and just laterally. And my concern for that is, obviously there's always trees around houses, and trees, at times tend to accumulate with old tree debris, falling pine needles, pine cones, stuff that's dry, which could then, pass every comment that I get passed through my office is decorative material, or more specifically bark, mulch, and any ground covering that could be combustible or catch fire. I know there are some statistics on bark and mulch fires around the house. From one thing that I've noticed is that there are some window panes that can, with the right reflection of the sun, can create a magnifier effect to where it's, providing heat from the reflection of the sun on a certain area of the bark. And one thing that I encourage, if that is, around your properties, around your homes, is to keep bark and mulch moist, have moisture, some type of, watering system, garden hose, whatever you can do to keep that dry. That will help from bark, which is combustible, from ever catching fire. And it's from what I've seen, I've seen windows catch bark on fire. I've seen people light it on fire. But one misconception to that is that it's spontaneously combustible. It is not, but in the right conditions, and I don't think those conditions would be here in Benicia, it does have that possibility, but it is rare, and I've never seen it. And a lot of people that I know have never seen spontaneous combustion on bark itself. So the major takeaway for that is just to keep it moist and to monitor the reflection from the sun to your windows back to your mulch. If that's not the case for anyone, then no concern there. But I have seen that question get asked a lot of times, of whether or not it's a fire hazard. So to kind of move on to the inside, the things that are going to provide early notification to you to safely evacuate is obviously smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms. For smoke alarms, it's important that everybody has them. And what it does is they're detectors that sense particles of combustion or smoke and provide forewarning before a fire can impede your exiting impede your exiting, or evacuation out of the house. So it's very important that they're in the proper locations, that they need to be per code and per manufacturer of the smoke alarms. And those areas are inside bedrooms, outside bedrooms, and in common areas of the house on each floor level. So if you have a hallway, leading to 3 bedrooms, one smoke alarm would suffice the outside of the bedroom requirements, and then one smoke alarm inside each bedroom would meet that requirement for coverage. And then if you have like a split level, so a 2-story home, at least one smoke alarm should be on ground level. And usually these are recommended to be in locations where you're not going to get nuisance alarms or, cooking, steam, setting off alarms. So I always say near the entrance to the stairwell or somewhere in the living room is a good place to where if you're upstairs, you can get notified of any detection downstairs. For carbon monoxide alarms, it's very important to know that carbon monoxide is a gas that is a silent killer that you can't see or smell. And carbon monoxide poisoning can occur from any off-gassing of any open flame. So you have your water heater, you have your propane stove, you have your vehicle, which is a combustion engine in the garage. It's important that you're providing carbon monoxide alarms on each level of the house, because a lot of times that gets overlooked, and then when you start to get the effects, there's a lot of question as to what it is, and a lot of people don't know. And once carbon monoxide gets in your bloodstream and starts depleting oxygen levels, it could lead to serious health effects, such as organ shutdown. And we've seen it here at the fire department. So it's very important to really know what your sources are and to get those carbon monoxide alarms mounted in those designated locations. One recommendation that is most times overseen with carbon monoxide detection itself is that if you have a forced air furnace that provides return air into each bedroom, it's important to have carbon monoxide alarms in each room. If it's a furnace that's like in a common area that heats up the house, there's really, the only concern would be to have one in that vicinity of the bedrooms, and then you should be covered from there. Some other tips that I can, think off of the top of my head is, don't leave your car idle running in the garage. I've heard of, people getting symptoms, minor symptoms from, just, warming up your vehicle in the garage. And then, when you're getting ready for work or getting ready to leave your house, you go in your garage and you start to feel ill. So there's a lot that I can kind of jump into on that. But, the biggest, part that I want everyone to learn of is if you don't have these devices is to get them. And they also make special smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms that are a combination, to where you can buy one unit that detect both instead of each singular unit. And there's also special alarms that you can get that can provide enunciation, specific for like hearing loss, or some type of visibility features where it's like a strobe. So it's important to know what your limitations are. If you can't see or hear, just know that there are devices out there with special features that accommodate each person's abilities. So encourage you all to see what you guys have at home, and to be reactive to that, and buy the type that you need. And if any questions come up with this in this presentation or even in the future, just know that I'm here to help. I get these questions daily. So encourage you all to just remember me if it comes up and you have questions. I'm happy to help. So with the smoke alarms and carbon monoxides, it's important that they are tested monthly or per the manufacturer's recommendations, which is sometimes weekly. I think weekly could be a little excessive, but I encourage monthly is to check those alarms, make sure they work. If anyone is still using the 9-volt battery, 9-volt battery conventional smoke alarms or carbon monoxide alarms, is to get those upgraded. I know that you cannot buy that conventional style anymore. The new style, which helps out significantly with reliability and just long-term functionality, is the 10-year lithium ion detectors. And that prevents, people from hearing the nuisance alarms, which are more of the conventional style, which are really sensitive. And it also prevents, removing the battery or being annoyed of the chirping sound once the battery is indicating that it's low. The new style alarms have a non-removable battery and they're functional for 10 years and it's really low maintenance. And I highly encourage it because I come across, family members' homes and friends of mine who have not upgraded theirs and have took out their batteries because they're, annoyed of the sound and not knowing really what they're doing and what risks they're posing to their family. So encourage you all to evaluate that and to get those upgraded. They are a lot more better with, newer technology and last for 10 years to where it tends to be very low maintenance. So moving on with that, some of the common home fire hazards that I've been aware of by inspecting multifamily and by providing public education to people is there are certain things in your home that you should be aware of that you should not do, which definitely can contribute or lead to accidental fires. And with that is the housekeeping in your home. And what I mean by housekeeping is not, whether you're messy or clean. It's more of providing safe, paths of travel in your home to where, there's not end tables that could fall over or bookshelves that can fall over or, idle storage that could, impede in an emergency. And one thing that I, recommend is to start in the most remote point of your house or your bedroom of where you normally be at, and just make sure that your paths of travel are clear from anything that's impeding, safe exiting or can fall over and diminish that width of safe exiting. And talking about safe width, 36 inches is going to be the rule of thumb of what is safe. If you have an end table in the hallway that's real thin and long and it can fall over and require you to have to pick it up or, step over it, it's not safe. If you do have those things, you can always, get them secured, fastened to the wall with a bracket or get it completely removed. One thing that I've learned here in the 4 years with the Benicia Fire Department is we, as first responders, we also can be impeded for life rescue and life-saving efforts when there's storage at the front door or on the outside, or it's really hard to, get access to the back bedroom. So encourage you all to take that into consideration and know that it's going to help both you and us. Some other things that I've seen to be wrong or be, misinterpreted on what the safe use and handling is space heaters. I know this is kind of a hot topic every winter, and it's good to just be reminded of these things, is that space heaters do have a listing which states that there are specific instructions on how to use them safely. And I won't spend too much time on it. I don't know if, we all have central heating or if we're still using space heaters. I know at the apartment that I live in, I use space heaters. And I know that they're out there, not just in commercial buildings and businesses, but at our homes as well. And the rules to consider there are to always make sure they're directly plugged into a wall outlet. That is a requirement of the fire code, and that is a requirement from the manufacturers. I've never seen any brand that has allowed power or being energized from extension cords or multi-plug power strips. That's how fires with space heaters usually start, is with the overcurrent and with the GFCI, the ground fault circuit interrupter of the actual house panel or the power strip that it is in is working functionally. So with that, how you energize it is going to play a role on if it's safe or not, as well as the surrounding items around heaters. Radiant heat within 3 it on fire or get it to auto temperature. Each heat, depending on the BTU or the heat output that it has a requirement on safe distances from combustibles. The rule of thumb that I kind of go off of, which is specific from the fire code, is 3 feet. I've seen heaters have 5 feet and then 6 feet clearances. So it's important to just know what the radiant heat is heating up and if it's going to be a risk or not. So to move on from that, which kind of relates to the space heater issue, is just clearances away from ignition sources. There's an ignition source in your gas-fired hot water heater, furnaces, electrical panels, fireplaces. So it's really important to really know where these ignition sources are and how you design, decorate, or housekeeping around your house to keep these areas clear. I recently went to a family member's house. They had a wood fireplace, and they had Christmas stockings right above the fireplace. And when I went and put my hand on them, they were extremely hot. And that was a good example of how, fabric material could be susceptible to auto ignition if it's, has a prolonged amount of time of heating, and really what that material is. So encourage everyone to keep an eye on it. I usually see storage next to furnaces, next to water heaters. And, I have learned that these have caused fires, and they have been, conclusions for us in our investigation report. So it's important to just, have good housekeeping practices and just to know where your hazards are at around the house. So before I move on from fire itself, was there anything else that someone would like me to cover or discuss? If not, I'm going to move along. Go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, a number of years ago, where I was working in the library in Vallejo, we had a fire safety training from the Vallejo Fire Department. And that officer that worked with us suggested that we all have at home one of these kind of fire extinguishers. Yes. And so he and he said it's great to have one in your bedroom next to your bed, because you could either use it to spray ahead of you if you have to get out, or if you have an intruder, you can spray them or conk them on the head. Yes, which I really love. As a recently widowed woman, I went out and bought these right away. But the question I have is, this is now 14 years old, and it still shows in the green, but it says I'm supposed to get rid of it, and I don't know how to get rid of it. I don't know what to do with it.
So Diane, thank you for asking that question. I actually had this on my agenda, and I totally overlooked it. So I apologize. So per state law or per fire code, there is no current requirement that a fire extinguisher has to be provided for a single family home. However, as the first line of defense, fire extinguishers reduce the risk of, fatality, total flashover of a room, and also assists in evacuation to get out. And I'm glad you touched on this, Diane, because that is probably the most important thing that I can really, recommend for others, is that if you don't have a fire extinguisher, to get one. And to answer your question, Diane, when you purchase these portable fire extinguishers at a retail store, they tell you that the warranty is good for 6 years. And what that means is after 6 years, per state law, that these fire extinguishers have to get serviced. So usually for a household type portable fire extinguisher such as yours, they recommend that you replace it after 6 years. The reality of it is that if it is still pressurized, the dry chemical inside is still going to work and be functional.
Mhm.
What I recommend for any fire extinguisher that's older than 6 years and that is still pressurized is to, occasionally, either if it's once a year, twice a year, is to get a rubber mallet, shake it so that all that dry chemical powder that has been in the upright position doesn't get caked up on the bottom, and that when it's actually, going to be used, it's not just blowing air. So I've used several fire extinguishers that have probably been 12 plus years old in extinguisher trainings. They still work. So if you keep your extinguisher in the upright position and, you haven't touched it in several years, I would get a rubber mallet. I would hit it on all sides of the cylinder, shake it upside down, get that dry chemical loosened up, and let it settle for the next time that you do that. And that will, from what I've learned, allow a proportionate distribution of the dry chemical with the compressed air that's inside. If you have an extinguisher that's older than 6 years, I do encourage you to get a new one, just so that when it comes time to using it, there is nothing that has failed on it. And with portable fire extinguishers, it's important that they're being, inspected and monitored monthly, and if not monthly, annually. I know monthly can be a little excessive, if it's underneath your, kitchen sink or in your garage, you're not going to be always looking at it. But the key signs that your portable fire extinguisher is going to be functional when it comes time to use one is, pressurization. Make sure that needle in the pressure gauge is in the green and not the red. If it's in the red, it's not going to be pressurized. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. The other things to look at is that there is nothing inside that hose that has built up. I've seen, spider webs nests.
Oh yeah.
I've seen, physical obstructions. I've seen trash get, put into those. And it's important to just do a visual inspection to make sure that hose or that discharge nozzle is not damaged or in a condition that would prevent the dry chemical powder from coming out. To kind of extend on that, there should be a pin and a tamper seal that protects that pin from being removed. If that pin comes out and anyone puts pressure on the actual activation lever, it could discharge pressure, which could keep it from functioning by the time that you need it. For those of you who don't know, each fire extinguisher has directions on how to use. I always recommend that, and I also recommend that to review if you're not familiar, and also recommend to remember the acronym that we teach here in the fire service, and that's PASS, which is PASS, which is pull the pin, which is the pin that keeps the the lever from activating. Yes, thank you. And if you want, I can grab one too, or if you wanted to demonstrate it, Diane, that works too. So you have your gauge, you have your pin, you have your handle, and then you have your activation nozzle. So the acronym, as I was saying, is pull the pin, aim the nozzle, yes, and then squeeze and sweep. And the safe distance to use a portable fire extinguisher is usually per the size, but it's usually around 8 to 12 feet. And as you activate it and you suppress a fire that's, in its incipient stage, and what I mean by that is a fire no bigger than a trash can fire, or say like a skillet pan on fire. Anything beyond that, I would, recommend immediately calling 911 and evacuating. Or if you had a larger style fire extinguisher, you can, attempt to attack a larger fire. Diane, can you hold that up one more time?
Yeah.
Just so I can make a recommendation. Go ahead.
I also wonder, how do I discard this thing if it's no longer, this one's still in the green after 14 years, but I have others that aren't.
That's a good question. So the dry chemical that is inside is hazardous to the environment. It is, it could, affect aquatic nature. And if it does go down the storm drain, it's not good. It's a chemical that needs to get disposed of at a hazardous materials waste site. So if you have, old fire extinguishers with no pressure, there's a place in Martinez and there's a place in American Canyon. Those are the two closest places that I know of that accept them. I don't recommend throwing them in your trash can because it just, ends up being in the landfill and then, hazardous to the environment. But to dispose of them properly and to kind of touch base on what Diane has is that is a 1A 10BC portable fire extinguisher. And what I would recommend is buying a fire extinguisher that is twice that size. Ooh. That will allow, more dry chemical powder to be used against a fire. As well as a little bit more reliability. Those fire extinguishers for, I would say apartment units, are acceptable, but more or less for boats, motorhomes, vehicles. I always say it's better to have more than enough fire extinguisher than not enough. So I hope, everyone, if they don't have one, to get it. And the locations that I recommend are in the garage, or underneath the sink or somewhere from your bedroom to your exit door, so that if you, come out of the hallway at night and there's a fire, you can have that fire extinguisher to assist in your evacuation. And that goes a long ways if they are properly used and maintained. And one thing to kind of touch on that is for any type of stovetop grease fire, you're going to not want to use water. Water is reactive to grease. I know, they teach us that at a real young age, and the fire extinguisher is going to be your proper method of extinguishment for stovetop fires with grease. And another thing that I just kind of want to speak on, since talking about kitchens and fires, is that if there is a fire in the oven, your best bet is just to keep that oven closed and call 911. I've seen most fires in ovens flare up due to the oxygen that's introduced in the into the oven. And if it's a small fire, say, a lasagna with grease and cheese, catches fire, is to just isolate it, do not introduce any more oxygen. And that will be the best and safest method of extinguishment, is to let it burn itself out and for us to evaluate that fire is out. So containment is very important. If there's nothing else, and I know I can, go on with the fire extinguishers and the smoke alarms and carbon monoxide, I'm going to move on to earthquakes, if that's okay with everyone else. It's about 11:18. I think we're doing good on time. The rest of the stuff that I have is more for awareness and preparedness itself. And to conclude, I'll kind of cover a couple topics that will help in just preparedness in general with these three things. So here in Benicia, we are on a fault line, and that is the Concord Green Valley Fault, which runs from Martinez north to Fairfield, parallel to the 680. This is an active fault that still has the risk of causing earthquakes, and some statistics to this, which I found online, is that by 2042, which is in about another 21 years, we are at 72% that there's going to be a 6.7 magnitude earthquake here in the Bay Area. And it is a 16% chance out of all the faults that are here in the Bay Area that it's going to be the Green Valley Concord fault line. So I know, I personally wasn't here in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, but I know if you experience that, it is not fun and it is scary. And there's a lot of repercussions that come afterwards for the communities. So one thing that I really want everyone to be aware of is to know where their utility shutoffs are, and to understand that gas and electrical is not compatible. So gas is flammable. It's how we get our fuel for our water heaters, our stoves. And if any of these utilities are damaged, it's important that these non-compatible materials don't interact with each other. An electrical source, which is an ignition source, could cause an explosion or fire if there's any ruptured gas lines. And in addition to that is, water and electrical is also non-compatible. You can get, electrocuted, if these two things combine. So it's very important that you know where your gas main shutoff is, you know how to shut it off, you have the tools that you need to do this, and the same with electrical and water. So gas and water are usually found out on the exterior of the home, on the sides, usually within 4 to 8 feet of the front of the house. And the electrical is usually located on the exterior or on the interior, depending on the age of your home. So if you don't know how to shut those off, I encourage, all to do your research or ask someone on how to do those. If there's a significant earthquake that's causing, damage to a structure, it's very important that those, upon assessment of your home, those are the first things that you isolate so that the hazard doesn't, extend into your home and hurt you. So with earthquakes, we really don't know when they're going to occur. We have a time frame that's, determined by scientists. And as we've all learned and seen, is that they're not, abnormal. I would say we get an earthquake that I feel probably every couple months. That's usually around a 4.0 or lower. But the day that a big earthquake, 7.0 or higher, there needs to be a plan in place so that we can react to it. We know what to do, and that we're not panicking and making impulsive decisions that could affect us or others. The reality for earthquakes for us is that, assume a big earthquake happens and, our resources around town, Vallejo, Benicia, are going to be exhausted. And the way that we, triage these emergencies is that the most significant gets first priority, and it usually trickles down from there as to when homeowners are going to receive assistance. The chances of that happening within 24 hours is slim to none. So I encourage everyone to make a plan, make an emergency preparedness kit, and put it into perspective with training and with the anticipation that this is going to happen. So that we have the best possible outcome when this does happen. And if it does, you're going to want to protect your your torso area and your head, because without these two things, we're not going to be functional. We're not going to be able to think. So when the shaking does start, you're going to want to get under, a desk, table, in a entryway of a home, which usually is the most structurally sound, is to protect your head and to protect your body from anything falling, or that's going to, impair you or disable you. So it's very important that, you just keep this in mind, in that when, an earthquake does happen, you can, react responsibly and protect yourself. After the shaking stops, it's really important to evaluate the damage. You're going to know the severity of the earthquake based on the stuff that falls off the wall or off of counters. And if this is the case, I recommend doing a full inspection of your home, making sure that there's no structural damage, smelling for natural gas, which is odorized, looking for damaged electrical, looking for, leaks, floods, anything of that nature, and then respond accordingly. And this kind of goes back to, knowing what tools you need to isolate your gas and your water, and how to do it. And one thing that I will, after this meeting, share with Cynthia is some documents on how to make a preparedness kit, what those items need to be, and what to do in an emergency. And it oversees the fire, flood, and earthquake. So I know that will be helpful, and I would definitely recommend keeping all these documents and putting them in your emergency preparedness kit, so that when it does happen, there's a written reference material to use. And I personally haven't experienced any big earthquakes. I know my wife has, and it is scary. So I do want you guys to anticipate it at one point or another. I can spend a lot of times on earthquake preparedness, but the information I will provide will assist with that, and will help you, create a plan with your family and have, your options available to you once an earthquake happens. So in essence of time, I'm going to move on to flood. I know we're not, in the South right now or on the East Coast where they get, flooding. I know it's a little abnormal for us to receive flooding, but due to weather conditions and just the changing of our climate, it's good to consider it. Flooding can occur from the increase in our tides in the Bay Area, or even in the Carquinez Strait. I know Sulphur Springs Creek, occasionally every 5-10 years gets really bad flooding. The flooding I've seen here in Benicia is usually due to lack of storm drains, sewer drains, and low points here in the city. So encourage you all to, if you don't know already, is to find out if your house is in a floodplain area. This can be found on most cities' websites, and it also can be found through FEMA, is just to really know where you're at. With flooding, here in Benicia, I think the risk is a lot lower than earthquakes and fires, but we do have flooding where we have to occasionally assist in the rescuing or the removing cars from flooded areas, or I should say removing people from stalled vehicles in flooded areas. I've seen it probably twice in the last 4 years. We responded to flooding incidents. Same thing, with the flooding, is just to have a plan in place. If you have a second floor where you can, be at a different elevation where the flooding is at, you're going to be safe. If you know that there's going to be, weather patterns that contribute to significant rainfall, and you're in a flood area, you may want to, stay at a relative's house, or at least have in mind that once the water reaches a certain area that you're going to leave. So won't spend too much time on this, but don't recommend driving your vehicles through flooded areas. I've seen vehicles stalled, and then I've also seen people not want to leave those vehicles because they're going to have to walk through water or swim to get out. So yeah, just monitor the news, monitor notifications through social media or any type of mass notification system that you may be a part of. for those types of weather events. Moving on, the bigger question that I want to put together is how do we respond to these events? Do we evacuate the city? Do we shelter in place? Do we call 911? Do we call a neighbor? A lot of times, in the heat of the moment, without preparation, we don't really know. So this kind of falls into what I was mentioning earlier, is that our emergency responders are going to be triaging all these incidents and call generations due to fires and natural disasters. So make a plan, implement that plan, practice it, share it with others, get on the same page as your neighbors, and work together. Because as I was saying, it could be up to 24 hours to where we can really get around and to assist citizens in their private homes. I know we have programs such as the CERT team, which is the community emergency response team that, assists in neighborhood assistance with emergencies, but they are not really first responders. So it's important to, have a plan that address, needs for yourself, needs for your pets, emergency contacts, knowing 2 ways out of your neighborhood. And that really makes a big difference when emergency does occur. One thing, if anyone is not already registered with Alert Solano, is you're going to want to get registered for that mass notification program. And what that is, depending on where your geographic location here is in Solano, you will be notified of, natural disasters or events that the public needs to be aware of. Anything. And this could be, emergency alerts, active shooter, earthquakes, explosions, hazardous materials, and even wildfires. And it really does assist with prompt evacuation and assisting in, notifying everyone per their area. If you're not registered, please do so. It is going to help out significantly. And the website to register is alertsolano.com. And the other thing that I want to kind of touch base on is knowing our city's emergency evacuation plan. I know I think it was 2020, the Benicia Police Department mailed all residents an informative card showing what zone they're in and what areas they need to evacuate. And those evacuations would be prompted through Alert Solano. So it's important to know that you're registered and you're receiving those notifications, and you know what zone you're in and what path of travel you need to do to get out of the area in accordance with that plan. And that's gonna assist with a mass amount of people doing it all at once. And here in Benicia, we have 5 zones, and each one of those zones has a designated area to drive, to the nearest freeway to get out of the city. There's also now new signs posted up here in town where it says emergency evacuation direction, and it'll point you in the way to go. So want everyone to be aware of that. And if you would like more information on that, we do have a lot of information on the Benicia Fire Department web page that provides information in a lot more detail. So to wrap this part of it up, is to really know what your abilities are, know how to assess a certain condition, and to make changes accordingly to where it's going to help in keeping us in our homes and keeping us safe. Some other tips is know at least 2 ways out of your house. I know front door is always the primary, but given a fire in your hallway, you may not always have that option. You should consider looking at evacuating out of windows, or having certain preferred areas on a second floor that fire department personnel can respond accordingly and safely and get you out of there. So just for some things to think about. I'm gonna stop with that, that subject there, and kind of jump into 2 other topics that I think are good to consider. With the wildfire smoke, every fire season, we've kind of learned that this is going to be normal and a part of our daily lives. As fires occur in neighboring counties, and even, smoke that, drifts from, other states or other areas of the other areas of our state, is that if you have respiratory issues, or if you have, irritations to smoke, is to keep yourself safe, shut your windows, monitor smoke conditions, and to, respond accordingly. And what I really mean that is just being aware that breathing the smoke is not safe, and it could, contribute to other health issues. And we get calls about the smoke all the time. And, since we can't really control it, I just wanted to inform you all of the issue, and to, buy extra filters for your home, HVAC system, buy additional masks, shut your windows, figure out what you need to do to protect yourself from that exposure. And it's not good breathing in all those, particulate and matters, burnt products of combustion, and could definitely lead to health effects. One recommendation that I have is, if you have an iPhone, if you go on the weather, you can scroll down and you can review daily air pollution quality for your area. I think it's a great tool to use and just be aware of, and to protect yourself from it. Also, to kind of just stay informed, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District also, broadcasts this through their database. They broadcast it through the news, and really just want you guys all to stay informed on that issue itself. And it looks like getting some background noise. I apologize if you hear this is a leaf blower outside of my window where I'm at. So apologize about that. So if you don't, normally watch the news or check the weather on your phone to see what the air pollution is, you can always go on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's website, and they give you a whole bunch of helpful tips on how to protect yourself. And I would say wildfire smoke is probably, in my opinion, new the last 5 years, but we should anticipate it every year moving forward with how our state is, prone to mass wildfires. So important that we're staying safe inside of our home as well as outside. So to move on from that, one request that I had was to inform everyone of our Knox box key lock program. So here in Benicia, we have an approved method for immediate access to residents that have a high volume of medical assistance from our fire department, medical emergencies. And what I want to kind of share is that we have a program to where you can buy a proprietary lockbox to put at your front door that would assist in rapid response from our fire personnel once we arrive on scene. And the whole intent is to not cause any additional delays to where someone on the inside may need assistance and we can't access them due to a locked door. This key box program is our approved method of rapid access, meaning that when people try to call us and say, hey, I have a key box, I want to let your first responders know, so that when they come to my house for my mom or my dad, that they're not breaking down the door due to a locked door. That is not the preferred method that we want. We want everyone to, be aware of this program, and if needed, buy this lock so that we're not causing destruction and a burden to you guys, for the repair cost and, the damage itself, is that you provide us immediate access. And these home Knox boxes can be purchased through the Knox Box website. And the residential door lock box, which is the cheapest, is $170. And it's a box that holds up to 2 keys, and those keys would be your guys' home keys. And the fire department here has one proprietary key that's on all of our fire engines that assist us in accessing these buildings that are restricted due to a locked door. The cost of $170 and mounting it is a lot cheaper than a delayed response, which could have, consequences for both you and us, and as well as cleanup and repair costs. So I don't, and this is really going to be dependent upon, health conditions and what your history is with, calling 911. And I highly encourage it. It's a program that we recommend for all of our elderly and senior folks, and to prevent as the least amount as damage as possible to a building if we ever were to have to force entry, and to minimize our response times. And some of the benefits to this program is that assists our first responders in quick entry for medical emergencies. It reduces damage and repair costs, as I was saying. Reduces the risk of injury for our first responders who may have to force entry or access a house through another means. And it makes rescuing easier and faster, which is all of our first responders' priority. And I don't really have much to talk about for the Knox box, but I'm happy to answer anyone's questions. I will include this in my information that I will send out to Cynthia, with the hopes that she shares with everyone else in the organization. And it looks like we're right at about an hour. So the last thing that I wanted to offer to anyone is that per request, I am available for courtesy walkthrough of homes to assess, concerns or conditions that may be hazards. And that consists of, looking at the front yard, the backyard, inside the home, and then, testing smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, making sure those work, and to, provide that service to our Benicia residents, and to let you know that we are here for you guys. And I normally do life safety inspections in commercial buildings. I occasionally get requests, for someone to look at the interior of their home, but I do want to offer that as a service to all of our Benicia residents. And that would require just emailing me, calling me, and setting up a time to do it. So that's all that I have for this presentation. I definitely can go more in depth on all 4 or 5 of those topics that I covered, but I try to focus in on the key concepts that will kind of be embedded in your thoughts, and just something to think about, as you do your preparedness drills and you plan for, worst case scenarios. So if anyone has any other questions, it's all your guys' time now. So happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Mary,
No
do you want to go
questions?
ahead?
Yes.
Mary?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mary.
Okay. I investigated that lockbox thing about 1.5 years ago, since I live in an apartment in the Southampton area and live alone as a senior. And I found that that lockbox that you were recommending which is very expensive, was more meant for big multiple use buildings or apartments or businesses. But we went to Rayleigh's and I bought a lockbox for about $45. And we put it on the railing outside my apartment door. And I called you and I gave you the code number where somebody could enter the number to open it up. And you said that was okay.
So I do remember you, Mary, and I remember our conversation. That is not our approved and preferred method for rapid, access. But if price and, installation is an issue due to being in a multifamily, that is something that we have accepted in the past. With that, there is a little bit of a liability on our part that we have to protect ourselves for, and that is getting your key and returning your key, to that lockbox, so that, we're not left on the hook when something happens to your key and we're leaving it in a condition not to where we found it. And I'm glad you brought that up because I want to be as transparent as possible. If there is a financial burden, we do look at other methods on how we can achieve the same thing, which we have done for you. I do want to say that the Knox Box company has commercial building lock boxes that are, in the $300 range. And then we have the residential Knox box, which is door mounted for $170. So yes, it is expensive. But our goal is to try to limit the liability from having your key and to having a method that's not preferred. So we do accept that, given that there are circumstances that may prevent you from carrying out our approved method, but it is not our recommendation.
I think part of the issue was that the ones that you recommended had to be installed on the door, and this is an apartment building and we couldn't do that.
Yes, that is right. I remember that there was an issue with drilling into the door that wasn't the homeowner, or it wasn't the tenant's responsibility. So I do remember that, and that's, all based upon certain circumstance. But we do recommend the Knox box over any other lockbox.
And the other thing I had is this map that you sent to the homeowners.
Yes.
It's the evacuation route. And I'm looking at that, and my son lives in Fairfield, and if there were an emergency, he would try to get here. And I see the evacuation route shows everything like East 2nd Street, and it looks like a road parallel to 680, that all the arrows are going out. But it looks, as far as I can interpret that, it looks like the freeways would still be open to two-way traffic. So I'm wondering if he comes from Fairfield, if he would be able to get to me on Southampton.
It is my understanding that there will be two-way traffic if everyone in a certain zone is evacuating at one time. That opposing traffic lane should not be impeded or a burden to get to your address. I do want to, emphasize on it's all going to be the nature of the disaster and where that is within our city, if whether or not it affects your son coming to your house to get you out of there. Mm-hmm. So that's a good question that I probably don't have all the answers for you, but depending on the origin of where the emergency is, I don't see an issue where you would not be able to get assistance in getting evacuated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yes.
In my car, I have those things to knock out the window in case I go into the water. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking if I were isolated in my bedroom, would it be important to be able to knock out that window with something?
Absolutely. So most windows have a opening to where you can open the window, which is usually about half of the area of the entire window, where you can open your window halfway. You can push out the screen with your hand, but if it is a window, definitely by all means use whatever you have access to to break out that window. This can be done with a chair. This can be done with, a metal object, whatever you can put your hands on that is, sturdy enough to go through that window. I highly encourage you to do so and to find a tool that would be safe to do if it is a concern. And for your vehicle, that tool that you use for your vehicle can also, be of assistance in a bedroom as well. And I know each vehicle, if anyone doesn't know that, usually most drivers' headrest that you put your head back on your seat can be taken off and used as a
I didn't know
breaker tool to use. And I believe it is law by manufacturers that you have to be able to remove your headrest attached to your seat of your car for that reason.
that. Thank you. I didn't know that.
You're welcome. Anyone else have questions? So Cynthia, that looks like that is it.
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Sorry.
yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I live in the same, or next to the complex where Mary lives. And Margaret Wolf also. We have an ongoing issue with growth on the apartment side of the fence. And they have several large trees that are partly dead and a lot of overgrowth and bushes. And we've asked them in the past to take care of them, and they kind of pruned them back, but there are lots of bushy things that are right next to the fences that are a fire hazard. And I have called, I've had friends that have called and they've never come out. I just want somebody to come out and look at that.
Is this Crestview?
No, it's Club Pacifica.
Club Pacifica. Okay, so
That's 1300 Southampton Road.
yeah, I'm very familiar with the property. I inspect it every June.
Yeah.
And I maybe in the last 4 years have addressed the vegetation on the hillside abutting those multifamily houses that overlook.
Right next to our units, not right next to my unit, actually.
So you're talking about the trees itself?
The trees and the brush. There's some bushes and things there that are right up against, practically up against the fence.
Okay, so
If you come into where we live at Grove Circle, you could see it better, because if you come to Grove Circle, you could see it from my fence better than if you go into the Club Pacifica property, probably.
so I know that Club Pacifica does a pretty good job at maintaining the property. For me to do anything this year, I would need an email. If you send me an email, I can definitely go look at it, or I can write your
Somebody to
address
look at
down.
it and confirm that it needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your unit number there or address? And I can, or where is the concern at?
Is 1277 Grove Circle.
1277 Grove Circle.
Yes. And if you
Okay, and
came
it's next
there,
to,
you could see from just from my side how bad it is.
next to the building.
It was next to the fence.
Okay, next to the fence. Okay. So, yes, I do look at 30 feet clearances away from
Oh, polish.
multifamily. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's farther than 30 feet.
No, it's right.
It's right next to it. Okay.
5 feet.
So I will add that to my list
Great,
and
that'd
I
be
will take a
wonderful.
look. And
You can knock on my door and let me know you're there. That would be great.
and you're at 1277.
Yes.
Okay. And I communicate frequently, throughout the year with the property manager, or she's actually the leasing manager.
Yes.
So if it is a concern, I'll let her know and tell her gardeners to get on it.
Exactly. That's all we want. Huh? Margaret, you agree? Margaret, can you hear me? No, she's on the board. That's why I was talking to her.
Okay.
You're okay. Never mind. Okay, thank you, Robert. That would be great if you
Yep.
just come and take a look at it.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions?
I think I'm out. Okay. Thank you. I have to go. Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're
It was
welcome.
great. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Nope, I guess we're good.
Perfect. Well, I hope that was of benefit to you all, and I appreciate it again to allow us to, share this information, and I hope that you all have learned something and can take away from this.
Well, thank you. Thank you for
Thank you very
presenting.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. Have a good rest of the day, and I will forward Cynthia my information along with some other documents to share with the organization, and just know that any one of you can call me anytime. Happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.